This fruit is just fermented in sugar and it makes that syrup. It's actually leaning towards wine, so I'm gonna have to drink it up. But look how pretty that is. Not the Voss bottle, but just this infused water. That's strawberry mint and my blueberry concoction. I am so happy. They're literally so pretty. We had a storm last night and it is wet, wet, wet. Ooh, that one's busted. That's not good. Just to make sure you're seeing this right, I want to show you the difference. We have blue eggs, folks. Beautiful. Look at that. Blue eggs. Let's talk about it. All right, y'all, we're back on the couch. Long time, but you've been seeing me though, but it's nice to be back on the couch and chatting it up. So last video, you guys saw us take our Florida trip, and we're gonna be traveling a lot more, so stay tuned. We're gonna make sure that we travel through the months of July and August and September. Probably through to October actually, because the weather in Florida is so nice. But you saw me get some quail. Now, oh boy, the quail story. Okay, so these quail that lay the blue eggs that you saw are Celadon Coturnix quail. These quail are difficult to sex. Now, you'll see me, I'm going to show you the difference between a male and a female quail, and there's feather sexing and there's vent sexing, and then there's also the call that the male makes. I wasn't able to get the male to do the full call, but you will notice the sound is different from the chirping of the females. Long story short, I went to Florida to purchase 5 female Celadon laying quail. I ended up with 5 Celadon quail. Only 1 was female. 1. Horrifying. I didn't pay much for them. They were like $5 a piece, so it made it easier. I ended up giving 3 away, and I kept 2, thinking that those 2 were both female. Guess what? Only 1 is female, and I have a male currently. Now that male I do have up for free on a farming website, but yeah, I don't plan on keeping him because I don't want any fertile eggs, and I also don't want to be feeding anything organic feed, which is costly. It's not inexpensive. It's actually expensive now, as everything is. I don't want to be feeding him organic food and he is not giving me eggs. You know, if I were on a farm, I would probably process him and he would make a good little barbecue niblet, but I'm not. I'm in a residential, and so, you know, kind of processing animals for meat is frowned upon greatly. So I'm going to rehome him like I did the other 3, and there are people who do want them, and so now I can definitely put Celadon in front of the name, seeing that the female was actually a Celadon and laid me those beautiful blue eggs. let me introduce myself. I'm Dominique, and I'm here at what I just lovingly call my on-deck micro farm. Here I have a garden and I have quail. I also have a lower garden, but I am on less than an acre, and definitely my garden takes up less than an acre. I can also be considered a homestead because I have animals that give me food, and I have the garden that also produces for me. If you're new here, hi, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Be sure to hit that like button if you like this content, and hey, if you really want to support the channel and grow with me, subscribe. The subscribing really helps the channel. All right, let's get to work. I messed around and didn't cover the quail pen last night, and a epic storm came through, so I need to clean one of them, and I'm going to show you how I do that, and I'm going to show you the #1 tool on my micro homestead. Yeah, this tool saves me a lot of time, and with quail keeping, it's absolutely necessary. Quick note, traditionally quail are kept on wire, in wire pens, so that their poop, which really is strong and ammonia-like, drops through, and then you can pull the trays and just holds the trays. It's easier to keep them. Now, nothing wrong with that. I believe that's good animal husbandry. The way I like to do my animal husbandry as it relates to quail is I like to keep them on a hard floor with substrate, and I'll show you that substrate, so that they have that their feet are not constantly on wire. You know, it's got to be uncomfortable just walking on wire your whole life. And also they're able to dig and do more natural behaviors. No shade to anybody keeping them on wire. I have kept them on wire myself as well, and I just didn't find that method. I didn't like scraping the wire, because you still got to scrape the poop, right? I find that the smell is kept down with the method that I'm going to show you today. So let's get to work. All right, y'all, it does not take a lot to figure out that my favorite homesteading tool for the quail pen is the shop vac. Now, I had a method before, if you look in my earlier videos, where I had a scoop and a sifter, and that was when I had the quail on sand. So I have went through an evolution of how to keep the quail pen clean and smelling fresh using the substrate that I use, and a shop vac to clean it when need be has been the best method for me. The shop vac is a wet, dry shop vac, so if you want to use this method, that is what you will need to have. My shop vac is not big enough, and I will be buying an upgraded version that can hold more capacity, because the wet pine shavings, when the pine shavings get wet, they expand and they take up a lot of space in the shop vac drum, causing blockages. You see me shaking, beating, pulling the hose off, emptying this shop vac. All of this is because it clogs frequently, because there is so much volume with the wet pine substrate and the shop vac trying to suck this stuff through the filter. So the only solution for that is to get a bigger shop vac. That was just a picture of the clog. Sorry, you're just going to see a lot of dirty quail substrate, but this is just for anybody who is thinking about having quail and doing the type of animal husbandry that I do. This method works well for me, even though my shop vac is subpar. All right, the second tool that I have found on the homestead to keep the smell of quail down is baking soda. That is just, I told you guys I love to recycle, so an ice cream tub that I just keep full of baking soda. That way my baking soda from in the house, I'm not using outside, you know, to do micro homestead or micro farm chores. And I use it liberally. I go through big bags. You know, I go to Sam's or Costco and get big bags of baking soda. This baking soda completely annihilated the smell of the quail poop, and it also was successful in eliminating the flies because the flies were attracted to the smell. Even when this substrate gets wet, there is still no smell. Good old-fashioned baking soda. For the big brick in Sam's Club, I'm only paying about $8 and some change. So it's just phenomenal. I tried other deodorizers that were way more expensive, and baking soda is just the best I have found. So I also want to let you guys in on my method. My substrate is this fine pine bark, which I get at Tractor Supply. And you can see I made a no-no. I left the gate open, and here they come. Good for me that they are not flight conditioned, because you want to keep a quail pen between a certain height. I think it's less than 18 inches so that they can't jump fly. But you see, they were all coming out, and I'm over there working, and it's going to take me a while to see them. But I want to let you in on my method. My method is, because they're on wood and the wood is coated with rubber paint, on top of the wood I put baking soda to absorb any wetness that is going to seep through the pine, and the pine is going to fluff up. The pine bedding will fluff up, soaking it up. But putting the baking soda down first completely cut the smell. So I go baking soda. Oh, I see them. Look, I had to push her back in there, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm panicking because I'm thinking my son, I'm gonna have to call him to help me. But they just kind of pecked around and looked around and didn't go very far. So that is me trying to grab them really quickly, and aha, I got them. But putting the baking soda on top of the wood and then putting the fine pine bedding on top of that cut the smell down drastically. And even when it rains, it keeps the quail's feet dry. I don't know if you remember, but in the corner that is closest to the balcony, what is that, railing there, I had a pan of sand. That pan of sand, when it got wet, caused the quail's feet to be cased in little sand balls, and I would have to get them out and soak their feet and basically give them pedicures, because that's not comfortable and it can cause their toes to rot off. So I just started doing all pine bedding, and that has been great for their feet, great for the smell, and easier to clean because I'm using the shop vac. All right, y'all, let's recap. My top 3 most important items for quail keeping are the shop vac. My recommendation is that you get a shop vac that is super powerful with large capacity so that you're not experiencing clogs like I am. The second item, or really it could be item 1B because it's equally as important, is the baking soda. The baking soda revolutionized my quail keeping experience. It completely eliminated the smell, and it keeps a hygienic environment for quail keeping. The third item is, of course, the fine pine bedding, because it is super absorbent and it keeps the quail's feet healthy and their pen dry. So I want to show you some things that I upgraded in this pen. So I still have the same, well, actually this is a different waterer. This used to contain the original food. If you saw the original video, the color of that is yellow because it has apple cider vinegar in it. But because apple cider vinegar is just good for the digestive tract and just maintaining overall health. But I self-made these waterers, and I'll attach the link to the cups that I use. This is an upgrade. I bought this at Walmart because I needed one actually for the other pen, and I didn't have another recycled chip container. So I went ahead and bought this, and it has been doing fantastic. It's big, so I don't have to fill it up. Probably won't have to fill it up for a month. But you see right here, these are the fine pine flake. You never want to use cedar because cedar aggravates the respiratory system of people and pets. Upstairs, I keep sand. There will be some poop up here because I don't have to clean this much, but I keep sand because Coturnic's quail like to sand bathe.
And you can just see their feet are comfortable, they're dry, and they get to kind of scratch when I put mealworms or crickets in here. So this is the original quail pen that you saw me DIY at the start of the original homestead channel. And all I've done is I built this cover so that I can just walk outside real quick and drop it down in the event of a flash rainstorm. Now over here is the new one. I purchased this. I was driving down the road and there's like a roadside kind of, I would call it like a flea market style. And this was for sale. And the young lady was selling it for 50 bucks and I talked her down to 40. And I didn't need to do anything to this. It's beautiful. The roof on it was perfect. Everything is perfect. The only thing is when it rains, the rain comes in and it just deluges. So I keep a tarp so I can drop the tarp down and keep inside clean. So here are the Celadon. And Celadon just refers to the gene they have that causes the egg to be blue. And the one in that is the female, the big brown one, and that is the male. And you can hear him making that different sound while she just makes the little chirp. Chirp versus she sounds like a cricket, he sounds like a frog. And so this right here is the old feeder because I like to recycle plastic containers. This is the feeder from the other quail pen, but it fit in here because of the height. I couldn't, sorry, my shadow's in the way. I couldn't fit the bigger feeder, but I could fit a big waterer here. Now over here, you notice there is a hole in this wire I'm gonna have to repair because I tried to outside mount. You see how the water is outside mounted to give them more floor space? I tried to do that here, but this waterer would not work. Oh, you heard that? That is the male making the call, and that's why I can't have him because he's too loud. And that call will call in predators and different things. So that's why he's got to go. But I ended up having to, he hit up there. I ended up having to put this water inside because it leaked for days. And I kept having to come out here and clean and clean and clean. And finally I figured out that it needed to, that's the male calling, it needed to be set up and it had to be away from everything to prevent the leaking. If you guys can imagine this much water, I forget how many quarts this holds or pints. Actually, I think it's 2.3 gallon, all leaked inside of there. Every day I was coming out cleaning, burning through pine mulch, and it was just not fun. I want to give a quick updated garden tour. Instantly, you can see that I have made changes spatially out here. I went totally bananas. Guys, I went totally bananas out here, and I had too many things out here. I'm gonna point out where some things used to be, but spatially it was too cluttered and it was hard to move around. It was hard to get anything done, but also just visually it was not aesthetically pleasing because it was too cluttered. So I will just point out some of the things that have moved, as well as showing you how we're growing. There used to be a big pot sitting right there, and what was sitting right there was that tree right there with the big pot. I took that downstairs, obviously, because when I built the canopy for this, I couldn't close it because that big pot was sitting there. But also that just created runway space for me to be able to walk and clean and roll the shop vac, as I figured out that the shop vac was going to be my best bet for cleaning efficiently. The next thing you'll notice is the bean tower used to be over here as well, and this pot was over there. Well, obviously I needed the space to put this new pet pen in. So this pot had to get rotated. My long-term plan for this pot is as soon as this Roma produces its fruit, which I'm gonna probably just harvest it and let it counter. I like to let them get red on the vine, but I had a caterpillar problem, and with the rain washing off my organic
caterpillar killer, it isn't worth it. I'm just going to pull them and let them countertop ripen and can them. But this big pot is also going to go down to the lower garden. The beanstalk, I needed it to sit more in the light because the beans needed more light, and I planted a succession planting of beans. Many of the beans, they got weak, they die, they're not meant to last forever, so you just continue planting or succession planting throughout the season. And I've included some squash in here that are doing fantastic. Get out of here. The next thing, that's me fighting with the carpenter bee. The next thing you'll notice is the strawberries have budded, and just in time for you to see, here are some of the succession beans that I've planted, because some of the strawberry runners that you saw in a few videos ago did not survive. They didn't root. I probably should have put them in some water, let them root, then planted them, but I just planted them. Some of them survived, like, which one? I don't know if that was a runner. I think this was a runner. It's just taken off really well. But you see that I have planted beans in here because I want, I have been disappointed with my bean harvest. So I'm really focusing on the beans. The potatoes that I planted up top are doing great. And I had some suckers that I plant. Suckers are what grow in the armpits of tomatoes. Here's a good example. This is a sucker. And you pluck them, but sometimes I don't see them until they get really tall. And by really tall, I mean 6 inches and above. And when they get that tall, I take them and I plant them because they become a whole new tomato plant. And that is what you see here. So there are potatoes, which I'll be harvesting as soon as they flower, and tomatoes intermixed here, along with the lettuce, still flourishing because it's in the shade. The citrus was sitting here. Remember all the white pots? They were sitting here. They had to move, of course, so they went out here and they are doing fantastic. Here is one of the pots. You remember this pot? It was also sitting by the citrus. It moved here. These eggplants, I'm thinking about pulling. I was so excited about the Ikebana style eggplant, but they are not producing. The tomatoes, however, are. Here I have the majority of my citrus, and it's doing fantastic. I harvested one lime, and oh, did my lime get knocked off last night in a storm? Oh no, here it is. Here is another lime, and it flowered, and look at all those limes. This thing is fantastic. My Meyer lemon also has multiple lemons on it. And of course the Calmanden, I had to pick so many blossoms off of this thing because the tree would have been full and it would have killed the tree for the next season, or it just wouldn't have produced. But it is full of Calmanden. I still have the smaller tomato and some herbs, a cucumber that's pretty much spent. But if you look right here, I have cucumbers spilling out of the upper pots and spilling down. The lower garden, the new things to note are the orange tree that you saw, as well as I planted a second flush of corn. I don't know if I introduced y'all to the persimmon tree, but she's down there. And then I also have the loquat tree that came from up here in the big pot. The banana I up potted so that it can get bigger and hopefully give me some bananas next year. And then I forget what those are in that pot. The papaya. The papaya are down there in that pot. So I am just totally maximizing my space. I'm not going to go to the furthest part of the low garden, which is over there, just because I don't feel like walking over there. But this is the upper garden now. So it has 2 Caturnix pins, and it is thriving, as you can see. I had to replace the yellow stakes. So everything had these smaller yellow stakes, and I had to go with these taller stakes. These stakes are 5-foot stakes. They're just down in the ground, but you can see how fantastic my tomatoes are looking.